Hello everybody, I'm Chuck Gibson. It is time now for a Evagoras Papasavvas Racing race report, and I have with me on the telephone right now Evagoras Papasavvas from the INDY NXT series. Evagoras, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on, Chuck.
Hey, listen, it's my pleasure, Evagoras. You know, it has been a month since you and I caught up and did a little Tracking Evagoras Papasavvas Racing. And we're taking a little different approach today, Evagoras, because the last time you had just finished racing in the Indy Grand Prix, the two races there on May the 9th and May the 10th. But since then, I know that although you weren't at the wheel, you have been at a couple of INDY NXT races with the HMD Motorsports team. And so we're gonna rely on you. And now you put on your racing analyst's hat, Evagoras, and take us back to that June 1st weekend on the streets of Detroit for the Detroit Grand Prix. What can you share with us about that race weekend?
Yeah. Okay. So at Detroit, it's a street course, and you look at the track map, and it looks fairly simple because you just have 90-degree corners pretty much everywhere, long straights and all that, so it seems pretty simple. But actually, when we were on the track walk, you realize that it's not simple at all. And that goes for all street courses because it's all about the surface that we're racing on. And at street courses, it's super bumpy because it's not a permanent circuit, it's not a paved circuit, so it's super bumpy. And the surface changes a lot too. So you could be entering a corner on concrete and then you get to asphalt. So there's a bunch of different kind of materials that you'll be racing on, which makes the car, it makes it a really big challenge driving around street circuits. And also, a pretty big one is that there is no runoff, like there is no grass or anything like that. It's just straight concrete wall, pretty much. So
I was going to say it's streets and walls, right?
Yes, you have to be super, super precise and very much on the limit because there is no beyond the limit. Because if you're beyond the limit, then you're in the wall. That's how it works with street courses. So you have to be really, really precise. But so the HMD crew, if I remember correctly, during practice we were quite good. We had some drivers that were up there in the top 3, top 5. Nice. So we had a good pace. We have a good car. HMD Motorsports has a good car at Detroit, the street circuit. And, same in qualifying. In qualifying, I believe one car was third and fourth. So we were up there right behind Andretti. So we had a good pace. Now, the race itself, on the first lap, the first few corners are super, super tight, really slow and tight corners.
Right.
And when you try to fit around 20 INDY NXT cars into there, it's pretty difficult.
Yeah.
So there was a big pile up. I think about 3 corners into the race, there was a big pile up with the second half of the field pretty much being out of the race. I think 8 cars were in the pile up. So yeah, and it took a lot of our runners out. So yeah, it took a lot of our runners out of the race, which is really unfortunate. But once the race was red flag because of that. Right. So then after the red flag, we got back racing again, and it showed, drivers were being really, really aggressive on this street course because there's not many opportunities to pass, right? Like I said, it's very tight, very slow, so there's not a lot of opportunities to pass, so it's really all about, track positions. So drivers are being super aggressive, whether it is protecting their position or trying to attack a position. So, you saw teammates collide into each other and have, wing damage and such like that. And 2 Andretti cars came together. They both got front wing damage. And, you'd think that when you get front wing damage, especially with these cars, that you lose a lot of performance. But actually, especially with how the nature of the track is, it doesn't rely that much on aerodynamics because it's a very slow track, so it relies more on mechanical grip from the tires. So they were actually still quite competitive, and they were still fighting at the top, even with their wing damage. But it being a really rough surface that we race on, super bumpy, you know, when the wing is already compromised and you keep going over the bumps over and over and over again, the wing starts, you know, hitting the ground and scraping on the ground, and eventually, you know, it was bound to happen. The front wings of both cars fell off and started scraping against the tires. So then they both had to come into the pits to get a new front wing. So that, like, you know, that was a really big help for us because we were able to get in front of those Andretti cars who came together. So I think we ended up finishing second and third we ended up finishing second and third.
Right. You know,
Colette was second, and then Juan Manuel Correa was third. So yeah, I mean, overall it was a pretty good race for us, despite, you know, having the pile up and a lot of our guys being out, but we still were able to make the most out of it.
Wow, you know, and here for a minute, Evagoras, I thought I was going to have to say I'm cheating. I've got the results in front of me if you need help, but you have a great memory of that day, even though we're going all the way back to that June 1st weekend in Detroit. But indeed, Caio Collet, Juan Manuel Correa, and, you know, we didn't talk because, you know, those are podium. And, of course, Dennis Hauger collected what I think his third win in 4 NXT races. So he was number 1, and, of course, he's an Andretti guy. But, again, Collet, Correa, as you mentioned, but also not on the podium, but a close 4th place finish right behind Correa. Also, your other HMD Motorsports teammate, Josh Pearson, had a great day. So yeah, you know, a terrific finish, and of course Pearson and Correa, Pearson, and Hughes were really racing it out, trying to get that number 3 spot, and you know, and obviously Hughes from the Andretti team battling at the end. So great memory, Evagoras. So obviously an impact for you to be able to be there, and I guess again for you that the weekend experience. What do you take away? I mean, what are the lessons learned for Evagoras Papasavvas on a race weekend like that, where you're helping out the team in a different position rather than behind the wheel of a race car? What do you pick up in that situation?
Yeah, well, you know, watching the race and kind of watching it from a different perspective, it's really all about, like, what I got from that race is just patience, because, you know, even though you may not have the pace to finish on the podium, you know, maybe your car is not there, or you're not that comfortable with the track, so you don't have that pace to be on the podium. But, you know, in racing, you never know. A lot of things could happen. Nothing's for certain. So it's all about just being patient, doing your thing, and, you know, just letting the race come to you. So that way, you know, if incidents happen in front of you, which they did, you know, like I said, the Andretti cars coming together, going into the pit lane, and also, you know, the big pile up. So it's all about just being patient, letting the race come to you. And a lot of times, you know, 9 times out of 10, you get a better result that way.
You know, and so that's a great lesson to pick up, especially as you mentioned all the challenges of the streets of Detroit. What I found was really one of the most interesting things, Evagoras, and I'm sure you noted this as well. According to the final results, you know, the winning average speed for Dennis Hauger was just under, again, average speed was just under 80 miles per hour. But what the heck, it was like on that one straight stretch, you know, and I'm a Detroit guy, a Detroit native. I'm supposed to remember the street, but I can't remember the name of that street. But you got the long stretch on that one part, and you guys were well over 140, 160 miles an hour, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. It was up well into the hundreds.
Oh, yeah, for sure. On that back straightaway, we were, like, you know, getting up to 170.
Right.
So it's really like, you know, the average speed, like I said, even though you have that long straightaway where you can really get up to speed, all the corners are really slow corners, right? They're all very tight and very slow corners, which is why the average speed is so low.
Yeah. Well, which brings us back to, the point. You pick up a great lesson on, the patience and letting the race come to you, because, opening it up to nearly 170 on that backstretch straightaway, that's wonderful. But, ultimately there's going to be, I know that where you were talking about the pileup in that third set of turns that happened at the start of the race, that was like 35 miles an hour or something like it was.
Yeah,
you had to really drop way back down. So I think that's a great thing for the listeners to pick up the differences and how you can take the view when you're not in the car racing and see it from a different perspective and understand how letting the race come to you can make that kind of a difference. And obviously a great day for the HMD Motorsports team with two podium spots and Josh Pearson, chasing that just right behind that at number 4. So anyway, so that was Detroit on June 1st. And then this past weekend, I hope you and your dad were able to really enjoy a great Father's Day. And I just call it the Gateway. So you guys were in St. Louis for the INDY NXT Firestone at Worldwide Technology Raceway. I think I got that right. So can you, that was a lot more fresh in your mind. So what can you tell? Was that is that an oval course?
Yes, yeah. So Worldwide Technology Raceway, also known as Gateway.
Right.
That track is an oval. Yes.
Okay, so that was again. You're not at the wheel for that race this past weekend, but you're there, supporting your teammates and learning lessons. And especially your experience, again, for the listeners who may or may not know this, those that have been with us all the way, Evagoras, they know darn well, you're a road course guy, and that's your main thing. You've got experience, a little bit of experience on the ovals, but being there for the oval, tell me about that experience for you, and again, your analyst's review of the race over the weekend on that oval course.
Yes, being on an oval. The races, it's the same length of race, but the races seem a lot longer because it's a lot more laps. So you're putting a lot more wear not only on yourself, but also on the tires and, on the car itself. So it was really like during the race, it was really all about just taking care of your tires was a big thing. And I mean, and having a car that's set up to help you take care of the tires, not really dig into the tires too much. That was really going to be a priority. So, we're watching the race, and first of all, before the race even started, the qualifying format on ovals is completely different than road courses. Instead of everyone going out on track at the same time, it's one by one. So, they line up in reverse championship order, so the car who's leading the championship would go last. Right. So they line up in reverse championship order, and you go out on track, you have one warm-up lap, and then you get two qualifying laps, and then you go into the pits. And the qualifying, it's not so much by lap time, it's by average speed. So the higher your average speed, the higher up on the grid you'd start. That's how they do it for ovals. So that was really cool to watch that happen. It's a lot more tense, the one-car qualifying format, because you have all the focus that's on you. So anyway, we had quite good pace. We have a good, once again, the HMD INDY NXT car is very good at the oval at Gateway. So we were quite fast. We qualified, I believe, P2. Kyle Collette qualified P2. Very close to P1 as well. And not only that, but Kyle Collette also had the fastest one-lap speed. One-lap average speed of, I believe it was 166 something miles an hour, like 0.1, 0.2 miles an hour.
Yeah. Real quick, Evagoras, to cut in on you, and you kind of touched on something right there, talking about he had the fast lap at 166. And we just talked about the average speed for the Detroit Grand Prix being, half of that, like 79 miles per hour was the average speed. And then boom, the next race, 14 days later, they're on an oval running, like you said, and Kyle Collette had fast lap 166, more than twice what the average speed was on a road course. I just want to let the listeners kind of let that sink in a little bit. These guys are driving, in different situations, and sometimes, 166 miles an hour is kind of getting around the course, isn't it?
Yeah. So you need to be very, very well adaptive to be going from a very slow street course to a very fast oval.
Right.
So after the qualifying format, we go into the race.
Right.
And Kyle Collette did take the lead of the race and was leading the majority of the laps when he went around the outside of Dennis Hauger.
Yeah.
So it was really... But, the race is 75 laps long, so you're really pounding on the tires the whole time. And, it's a short lap, so you come out behind lap traffic very easily. The slower cars, you come out to lap them.
Yeah.
So it's also, you need to be very thoughtful and mindful going around lap traffic to try and use them to your advantage to get around them quick enough to where you don't lose any time, with the dirty air in the corners. So that was really like a big key to the race, is if you can get around lap traffic quickly, and also, like I keep mentioning, is taking care of the tires. For example, the guy who won the race, Lockie Hughes, very familiar name.
Oh, yeah.
He, in the beginning of the race, he was down in 5th or 6th. That's where he ran the majority of his race, in 5th or 6th. And then towards the end, he really came alive. He was saving his tires the whole time. And then while everyone else was burning their tires, so Lockie was down in 5th or 6th. And then, the last few laps of the race, he really comes alive and he starts, carving his way through the field, and then he ends up winning the race. So it's really that's like it really stands out that taking care of your tires is like the biggest thing on ovals. It's like the most important thing, because we don't do pit stops. We're not a pit stop series.
Right.
So there's no pit stops. So whatever tires you have on, you have them on for the rest of the race.
Another great point for the listeners and understanding what's happening in the INDY NXT series compared to, somebody made a comparison. INDY NXT is like AAA baseball compared to Major League Baseball, with, of course, INDY NXT being, that's the major league. So here you guys are. No pit stops, but when you get to NTT, of course, the races are longer and there are pit stops. But that is a great point. You guys are learning some great, valuable lessons about, taking care of the tires. That has to be a key thing almost every race, because as you said, no pit stops. When your tires are gone, they're gone. To your remembrance of the race, and you called it pretty well, Kyle Collette, and again, I'm cheating, Evagoras. I've got the information right up here in front of me. But Kyle Collette, out of 75 laps, Kyle led 58 of the laps. What a great day for him. And as you noted, he ultimately finished on the podium, a great result for HMD Motorsports. But Lockie Hughes, as you said, he started in a 5th position and hung around there most of the race, as you mentioned, but came on strong at the end. Ultimately, only led 14 laps, but he takes the checkered flag. A thing that I found interesting, and I don't know because it's really been right now. It's been Hauger who has been dominant, but Lockie Hughes is the other dominant driver so far. And Lockie's a rookie, correct?
Yeah. Lockie is a rookie. It's his first year. There's a lot of quick rookies in this season. Dennis Hauger is considered a rookie as well because it's his first year. But obviously, we know how much experience that he has.
Right.
The rookie title, you don't only get like the championship reward, but there's also Rookie of the Year reward as well. So that's going to be, something that drivers are going to be going after.
Yeah. Well, curiosity, and obviously you are a rookie in the INDY NXT series. How does that work for you? Because obviously, you're racing not every race in the entire series. Will you qualify in the rookie driver standings? Because I know ultimately in the championship driver standings, you don't have enough races to even really be, at the top of that list. So that would be an unfair disadvantage if they were saying, hey, he's not, he didn't win the championship. Well, of course not. But what about the rookie standings? Are you going to be a part of that at the end of the season? However they feel?
Yeah. I mean, I'll be a part of the rookie standings, and I'll also be a part of the actual championship itself, right?
Right.
It's just, obviously the actual championship, that's not, what we're thinking about right now. We're just thinking about learning as much as possible. And then the rookie standings, it's the same thing with that, really. So we're not really focused on that because I'm only doing, 4 events during the season, so I'm not even doing half of the season.
Right. Well, and that brings us. So anyway, the bottom line, picking up some great lessons. Over the last 3 weeks, they're at Detroit, and then this past weekend at St. Louis. But now, let's go forward. Let's put Evagoras back in the driver's seat here and head to Road America. But real quick, I do know. Aside from just traveling to and soaking up more lessons and knowledge about the tracks and racing, I do know you were behind the wheel. You were in the seat at Iowa a little bit over a week ago, right, for some testing?
Yes, yeah. So I had a test there. The test is it's flat out in the corners pretty much. But, as the day went on, started pushing more and more. I did, a bunch of things came together. It was very windy that day, and I hit a bump kind of just wrong, just a few degrees wrong. And then we were also, we had a car setup issue as well, where I was hitting the limiter in 6th gear and top gear. So all those things came together, and I lost the rear end of the car, and I ended up going in the wall.
Ooh.
But and that ended our day early. But it's okay. Things like that happen, especially on ovals. Everyone crashes on an oval. That's just the nature of ovals. So it happens and we move on. But it's not that big of a deal. It's not like I was just driving around very cautiously. I was pushing the limits, and everyone knows that, and everyone saw that. So it's nothing too crazy.
Yeah. Well, and Evagoras, we had a slight glitch when you started that. You started to say at the very beginning, and we caught most of what you said about Iowa and what ultimately happened for you there. But right at the beginning, you said something about the Iowa track, and the listeners didn't get to hear that. If you could repeat, just a real quick thumbnail. So going to Iowa for the testing was what?
Yeah. So the Iowa test. It was very windy there. The track is very fast. It's a flat out oval, so we're full throttle through the entire track.
I see.
It's a very fast oval.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you repeating that, because we just missed that little bit there. There was a glitch of some sort, and I just wanted to make sure that the listeners got to hear that part. But anyway, so. Again, that aside from being at the oval last weekend and seeing it, you also got on the oval track during the previous week and got some laps around there, despite a day that got a little bit cut short there for you. But that's going to take us. You're back on the road course, back behind the wheel at the Road America at Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin for the Grand Prix at Road America. That will be this weekend. In fact, as we're talking here on Tuesday afternoon, I guess you're headed to Wisconsin tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken, on Wednesday. But you'll be there racing on, Sunday, June 22nd for the Grand Prix at Road America. You've got a lot of experience on that track, so tell us what you want to about that track and your hopes and expectations for this weekend.
Yeah, so it's just going to be to keep learning, gain as much experience as possible at Road America, and Road America is lots of long straights, so it's going to be learning just a different style of driving this car. Each track requires a different style, so I'm really looking forward to it. And it's really just as simple as that, just learning as much as possible, because that's what this whole year is about.
Yeah. So, Well, Evagoras, thank you so much. I really appreciate your insights about the racing in NXT that's been going on, and about what what's your race strategy, kind of things for the rest of the season, and as you just mentioned, for the Grand Prix at Road America. It's continuing to learn. I really picked up, when you said be a sponge. I've been calling you Sponge ever since, right?
Yeah, that's really all it's about this year.
I'm probably wearing that moniker out, my friend. But obviously you are taking advantage and soaking up the experience, and then at the same time going to Road America. Evagoras, you have to have a solid feeling about not just soaking up more and learning, but also leaning on the experience you already have at Road America and being able to compete this weekend, yes?
Yeah, both Road America and Mid-Ohio, my next 2 races, I have a lot of experience there at both tracks, so I'm looking forward to hopefully put down a good result as well.
That sounds wonderful. And again, and so real quick, and you just touched on it, so Road America this weekend, and then you'll have basically, although you're going to race back-to-back, it won't be back-to-back weekends. You'll kind of have a week off in between before INDY NXT gets back on a competitive race course. As you mentioned, Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course. You guys will be there July 4th, 5th, and 6th, ultimately for the Grand Prix at Mid-Ohio on, I believe that's Sunday, July the 6th. And so, what kind of strategies, again, I guess it's the same. I hate to make you repeat yourself, but anything's, I know there's something special. Mid-Ohio, we got to tell the listeners that don't know it, Mid-Ohio, kind of like your home course. You live here in Ohio. It's kind of like your home course, and you have a couple of victories at Mid-Ohio. So is that a little extra boost and energy for you, knowing that coming up for you is another race at Mid-Ohio?
Oh, for sure. That's definitely boosting my confidence. So hopefully, along with learning at Mid-Ohio, we can once again put down a good result as well. That's what I'm really looking for.
Yeah. Well, we're looking forward to talking with you and seeing great results for you, and just hearing more about what you're learning. And Evagoras, I hope to see you there at Mid-Ohio. We'll see how that goes. Right now, my plan is to be there trackside and get to watch you firsthand finally at Mid-Ohio. Unfortunately, I am. You'll be in Wisconsin on June 22nd, and I'll be in Chicago on June 22nd. So I'm not going to be at Road America, but I wish you the very best. I know all of our listeners are excited about the next chance to hear about your results, and we're all rooting for you in that Grand Prix at Road America this coming weekend, Evagoras. So thanks again for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, listeners out there, and certainly I got to say race fans, that was Evagoras Papasavvas giving us a little bit of racing analysis and a preview to what's coming up for him as he gets prepared to race at the Road America Grand Prix this week, and then 2 weeks later on that 4th of July weekend, the Grand Prix at Mid-Ohio. And this is Chuck Gibson for another Evagoras Racing Race Report here on Loveland Beacon. Thanks for listening.